Hello there.
Hey everyone, it's future editor Matt once again. And what you're about to hear is the second half of a long night of recording. The first half you can find on the previous episode of this pod. So if you didn't listen to that previous episode, please go back and do that. We talk about the original trilogy movies and Solo and Rogue One, and our love affair with Rogue One. Whereas in this episode, we do get into the sequel trilogy and some other things. So it's going to start pretty abruptly here because of the just sort of cutoff that we did in that first hour of recording or so. So please take a listen for that if you get a chance. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of the episode. All right, welcome everyone to this BTB short, The State of Star Wars, where four self-professed Star Wars nerds talk about what else? Star Wars. Before we get started, just a reminder, we're part of the SPDM Podcast Network. You can check out our main cast, the BTB Movie Club, along with a ton of other great podcasts wherever you listen and download your podcasts. My name is Matt Smith, and I'm joined by Aaron Lashbrook,
Hello.
Brian Larson,
How you doing?
and the T in BTB, Tim Larson.
Good to see you guys.
Just before we get started, spoiler warning, we will be talking about Star Wars, both past, present, and future, talking about characters, plots, locations, movies, shows, etc. So please know that this is your warning. If you haven't seen Star Wars, there are spoilers ahead. So what about the sequel trilogy? What do we think? Did they do anything right there?
You know, so 2009, J.J. Abrams reboots Star Trek. And they decide, okay, let's hand Star Wars over to J.J. Abrams. And he does the first movie, Force Awakens. I thought it was a well done movie. I liked everybody they're bringing in. They bring in Rey. You don't know who she is. Everybody's assuming she's a Skywalker or something, and for some reason they get to the next movie and Ryan Johnson comes in and he takes over and he writes and directs the next movie. Also a good movie. Don't mind it. See where he went with it. The scene on the world that had the white sand on top and red underneath.
The salt.
The salt.
Yeah.
I thought some of that was just
Gareth.
brilliantly done. I thought it was visually stunning when they were doing the fight scenes on there and they were having the crafts on the surface and drawing line. But some people didn't like it, so they get rid of him, and now we got to redo in 3 in The Rise of Skywalker. We got to change what he established. And it seemed like they didn't want to run with it. They didn't want to. So 3 had a lot of, okay, we got to fix what happened or not 3, but 9 had a lot of, we got to fix what happened in 8.
Yeah.
Just kind of my opinion on the things. So by not J.J. Abrams not being involved in all 3, because he came back in 9 to do some of the fixing, so to say, it caused a lot of issues. And Star Wars fans who are fickle about so many things were mad about what happened. And then I don't think whatever resolution they came up with, they were going to pick everything apart. And that's kind of what happened.
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest part of it. And again, fandom, I like your word there, Brian, fickle. They're so quick to like jump on any inconsistency or anything they don't like. But there's so much about those movies where it's like, yeah, it's fine. Like it's Star Wars. Yes, the Emperor can come back as a clone because it's freaking Star Wars. We already know they can do that. If you read any extended universe stuff, if you've read any of the novelizations of things, like there's things all over that they can do. And to Aaron's point earlier about the prequels, like you can still like them. It's okay that they're not the original trilogy. Like you can just like them for what they are. I'm not saying they were perfect by any stretch, but yeah, no, I thought they were fine. They're Star Wars, and I'll take anything that's Star Wars, I guess. So maybe that's my problem. But
Well, and like Brian was saying, so J.J. Abrams came in and did the first one, and right after it happened, the same people who were probably complaining about 8 were complaining that, oh my god, which they loved, but oh, he just did a shot for shot remake of A New Hope. He
Right.
gave us
Right.
all the same beats. He gave us all the same, you know, everything, and they were complaining about it. And then Ryan Johnson shows up and he's like, all right, I'm going to turn it on its head. I'm going to,
Right.
I'm not going to give you anything you're expecting.
Right.
I'm going to stray so far from the source material. You're going to say I should be arrested.
You guys, I'll kill Snoke.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do what I want.
And in a pretty cool way,
Yeah.
um, there were different things that came out of that. And then I get, because Lucas did the same thing on the original. He directed the first one, and then there were different directors for, 2 and 3. I don't know if, they had an idea of how off the rails Ryan Johnson was going to get. And at the time, I was like, this is weird,
Mm-hmm.
but how long ago was it that one came out?
2017.
All right,
Last Jedi.
so 7 years later, 8 calendar wise, it sat with me fine. Like
Yeah.
I never hated it, and I like it even more. And I'm as time passed, and it's like the Force was introduced, and it took time, and it evolved, and what a Force wielder could do, video games, and you mentioned a lot, Matt, the comic books and the ancillary stuff. Um, uh, you know, yeah, was it weird that clone Emperor Palpatine could, summons a armada from the dirt, and like I don't know exactly how all that worked, but it's fine.
Fine.
They needed a big bad to fight against. Um, but the last thing I'm going to say is some of the stuff Ryan Johnson did set the groundwork for, I think, was a more interesting love story than anything the original trilogy set up. Because there was definitely something there between, Rey and Kylo Ren, and like he wanted something. It was just, it was an awkward, more, I don't know, not more real, but I don't know, more interesting. And I'm going to call it a love story again, than Luke and Leia, which, brother, sister, that was weird. So then they had to make it Han and Leia,
Right. Right. Yeah. I think the sequel trilogy, I'm going to say something similar to what I said with the prequel trilogy. It almost, it had an uphill climb, right? Because now you have Disney on your back, like, hey, we got to make money. So you got to do this, and you got to make sure you have the Force, and you got to make sure you have lightsabers, and you got to make sure you have this. And I'm not saying all that happened, but I have to believe that was part of the conversation in production meetings was, hey, we got to have all these things because we got to sell toys, and we got to sell fake lightsabers, and we got to sell our Disney World land that we're going to build and all this stuff. So I kind of feel like no matter what the director or producer was doing at the time, they kind of were stuck in a sort of a probably a box a little bit. Um, but they also, had to try to do something exciting and new in Star Wars that we hadn't seen before, and they tried. And sometimes you try stuff and it doesn't go as well as you think it's going to. And I think that's probably what happened with a lot of it is we were going to try to make this different, like you said, Aaron, like, hey, I'm going to go in this weird direction and see how it goes. And it just, if it would have been a hit, it would have been lauded as the greatest Star Wars movie since Empire Strikes Back, but it wasn't. So, and yeah, and there's some great scenes in that trilogy. You can make fun of me if you want. Kylo Ren shrugging when he gets the lightsaber through the stupid dyad force thing is one of my favorite things in the whole trilogy. When he shrugs his shoulders and is like, "Yep, this is what I
Give him
did."
a little nod.
Yep, and then now I'm gonna kill you because I'm still Kylo Ren. I thought that was great. I didn't care about. No, I don't know how possible a dyad of the Force is created by some clone emperor. I don't care.
It's Star Wars. Let it go.
So your first question was what they do right. Um, I think introducing Finn as a defective stormtrooper.
There you go.
Thank you. That took a
First
minute.
order trooper.
Yeah, sorry.
Calm,
These are
calm. Breathe, Aaron. Breathe.
these are 8.2% alcohol I'm drinking over
I'm drinking rum and I can still get it right.
here. Having Finn as a defective stormtrooper was a nice move. We hadn't seen anything like that before. Rogue One had a little bit of that, but not directly a stormtrooper. I think Rey is an outstanding character. Her journey is pretty good. I think her journey through all three movies is really, really good. There was a little bit of, Starkiller Base and Death Star. I did kind of feel the same thing Brian was talking about earlier, like, or maybe Aaron was like, they redid the same idea that they had. And it was like, I think the Empire could have got a little more creative, but also the Death Star was a badass thing in the universe. Why wouldn't you build a new one after you blow it up? So you could take that argument and go either way. I like the way it landed on its feet. I totally agree with you guys. It kind of felt like watching those three movies was going on a family vacation after mom and dad argued about where we get to go. There was a plan, and then mom and dad argued a little bit, and then we went and did something else. You know what I mean? The Last Jedi is a really interesting conversation point for this, for what we're doing here, because it's so polarizing. Even critics and viewers, if you look on Rotten Tomatoes, they're flip-flopped. Force Awakens, critics don't love it, viewers love it. Last Jedi, flip-flop. And so that's a really interesting thing for such a giant movie franchise. So I'm on board with all three of them. I like them better than I like the prequels. But the fickle fandom, and I love that we've maybe coined a term here. I remember being in the Rise of Skywalker in the theater, and politics come into view also, because at the very end of that movie, there's the celebration after everything's over. Two girls kiss, and the dude sitting real close to me like stood up in the movie theater and like waved his hand at the screen like I've had it and I'm never watching another Star Wars movie, and that was the tipping point for him. Like, you've ruined my childhood type thing again. And I was like, dude, if there's stuff like that bothering you about this movie, I don't know that you came here in the right frame of mind.
Right.
Like that's the smallest thing for you to be really upset about. I don't know that the last three had a chance, not because the first three were bad, but because the reaction of fans to the first three, like you said, Disney putting them in a box. I think the fandom had them in a box as well.
Sure. Fickle fandom, Brian Larson.
Mm-hmm. It's canon.
It's canon. Okay. So future movies. So I looked this up. We have a
Before we get to future movies,
Yeah,
something
go
we
ahead.
didn't really
Sorry.
talk about. No, it's so the original trilogy.
Mhm.
They did the special editions,
Yes.
Mhm.
and I'm not sure which year it came out, but they re-released them in the theaters and they added stuff to them.
Those were the 97 ones.
97,
97, 98, 99, or 96, 97, 98.
It was
It was
before 98 for sure.
Yeah, it was
97.
97 for sure because I looked that one up. I don't know if they did them. I thought they did them in pretty close proximity.
It was like Christmas.
Oh, they
Yeah.
did. Oh, they did one a year is what you're saying.
Yeah.
I get
So it was
Okay.
like 90, so 95, 96, 97.
Okay.
Maybe, yeah.
Now, two things happened, one in A New Hope and one in Return of the Jedi, that they changed things. And I remember them, the Return of the Jedi, they actually used Christensen as the glowing Jedi at the end to
Mhm.
show
Right.
up. And people were like, some people, there was a good reaction from that one. I want to know what your guys' thoughts on Han
Han shot
shooting
first.
first.
On shot first.
So they have Greedo shoot first in the movie,
Mm.
you know, in the special
So Han's
edition.
not a murderer.
So Han, you know, why?
I don't care.
So
I don't
Han's
care
not a
about this at
murderer.
all. I
But
don't
but
care
I
about
think
this.
there's so much backstory to that, or I'm sure there is, right? Like he's not a he's protecting himself. He knows what it's about to happen. He's not an idiot, right? He's a smuggler, he's a scoundrel. He's been in this world of crime, family crime syndicate. Like he knows what's going to happen if he doesn't do that. So I don't care either way, but I'm okay with him shooting first to protect himself.
100%.
Are you okay with the scene that they released in the special edition?
Uh, it's whatever. Tim
Yep.
Tim said it already. Like I don't really care. I
Yeah.
wish they would have just kept it, but
That
I
got
really,
way too much attention for
yeah.
my opinion. Too much attention.
I
How
mean, some of
about
the stuff they did and making Cloud City and Empire that longer fly in, and you know the things that they added that way, I had no issues of. But
putting Jabba back in where he's talking to Han? Remember
Yeah.
that? Where because
Mhm.
in the original they filmed
In
like
A
a
New Hope.
human.
Yeah.
Yeah, they filmed like a human, and so it obviously didn't fit and whatever. I thought that was kind of neat. But I mean, like the bar alien singing group that could have I could have done without
yeah,
that. But whatever, like whatever. It's Star Wars.
And in all three of those things, it's almost like so Han shooting first, they digitally had like his neck move out of the way so they could have Greedo shoot at his head. And it was off putting. Even when they put Jabba in, which I fine scene, good scene, should have probably been added, gave us more context to who Han was dealing with. But the weird, because it was originally shot with a human, they had to
Stepped
digitally
on his tail.
have Han, step up over his tail or step on his tail. Yeah, and him like, that was weird. It's like, I get what you were trying to do, but just it's not there yet. You're trying to work the bugs out for this prequel trilogy that you're going to put out, and they nailed it with the CGI. Um, everything that I think they did in the original trilogy, except for Brian, you're totally right about Cloud City. Instead of having it, a white walled ring donut, the guy was ring, there was windows and you could see out into Cloud City, and they did farther shots and showed all that was perfect. But almost all the other digital shots, it's like, you added these,
Just leave it alone.
Right.
Yeah.
Having Luke scream when he let go and fell down the, chute. That was just a weird scream that wasn't there in the first one. It's like, I don't think he would have screamed because he let go.
yeah.
It wasn't like
It's
Vader
almost like they
pushed
ruined
him.
your childhood, Aaron.
It's not no. I
I
am
just
not
I felt that needed
that
to
fragile.
be discussed in this
Yeah.
episode as we were talking about just the movies.
It was exciting. I do remember waiting in line to get into the theater to see those.
Oh, yeah.
And once again, marketing thing. I bought, they would have been VHS tapes at the time. It was the last time you could get the original trilogy before they were doctored. And then I got DVDs of them being doctored. And
Yeah.
so, I can watch both versions of it. But even on the VHS, though, I don't think you get to see the stormtrooper hit himself in the head when he was
Right.
walking through.
They added that out.
A New Hope.
Unless you have the original 1982
Right.
release, which a friend of my wife does. So she won't
That's
let
awesome.
me have them.
That's awesome. Matt promised nerddom. We have some nerddom here.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Are we good with the re-release? That was a
Yeah.
good point. That was a good bring up. Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
Hang on, there was like we were talking, like I'm pretty sure it was Christmas every year or right around Christmas, which was great. It was also, for me, it was a resurgence of action figure collecting. They came out with a whole new line of Power of the Force action figures. They started off on like orange and red cards, and then they became green cards. All had Darth Vader in the background. And it was such a wonderful money grab. I was old enough to have a car, and I knew that Target got trucks on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So, I would be there in the morning to find action figures that I was looking for. And the internet was new, and, people were finding out like how many of each figure per case and what case codes. And it was an awesome time to be a toy collector. Because I'm sure for a worker at Target or Walmart or Toys R Us, it was a friggin' nightmare. But people would come in, like when the doors opened, it was like four of us Star Wars action figure collectors and three Hot Wheels collectors would be at the door when it would open. And like you would look at the boxes they were about to open and be like, oh no, I'm looking for a C49. This isn't it. And you would just stand there and wait for them to open it and just grab it out of their hand. I never would. But it was exhilarating. I'm sure it's what like people who hunt deer and shit, that sit in the woods and they're waiting. To me it was hunting. It was like I'm gonna go out, Tuesdays and Thursdays for weeks and not find anything I need.
Mm-hmm.
But that one time that the right package, and it's like, oh my god, it's Luke with the misfilled lightsaber that's a little too short or a little too long that everybody's been talking about, and I got one. I don't know what I'm gonna do with it, but I'm gonna pay $7.99 for it. It was great. I loved it.
So before we move on to new movies, just to make a correction here, 1997, the special edition of original trilogy movies, theatrical release, all in 1997.
Really, I thought it was Christmas.
January through March, so you weren't even close. Just
All right.
Wow.
We're just
I was
misremembering.
also in college and drinking every day.
Fair.
Matt didn't even wait for an edit to come around. He just put that right out there.
Hey.
Oh, we're talking live.
Now, do you have the 1993 original trilogy on Laserdisc, Aaron? That seems like something you might have. The last original trilogy theatrical release was 19.
I have Star Wars all three on Laserdisc. I don't know if
that's
it's
crazy.
First or last.
That's awesome.
Or if it's only one, but yeah, I have all three movies on Laserdisc.
That's crazy. Laserdisc.
And actually there's a thing, and I've never had a Laserdisc player to hook up until about a year and a half ago, but I've never plugged it in. But there's a thing, so I've never watched it. Big deal. I've seen the movie.
Yeah.
But I do have to watch A New Hope because apparently there was a formatting issue. And so on a Laserdisc, for those of you who don't know, it's like a big CD.
It's a
very
big CD.
Shiny and pretty. But you do have to flip it over during the movie.
Yeah.
Apparently on A New Hope, the picture progressively gets smaller until you got to flip it over, and then it gets big again, and then it progressively gets smaller on your screen. That's what I've read.
That's interesting.
Due to a Laserdisc formatting issue.
Huh.
So, and most people don't notice it until they flip it over and it goes big again.
Yeah.
That's funny. Just like it gradually.
Yeah, just
like the frog in the pot, huh?
It's so interesting knowing you guys, because Brian, if he gets a piece of technology, he's got it open and read the directions before he even takes the first step up the stairs to go into his house.
Yeah,
he's already plugged it in halfway up the stairs. And Aaron's like, yeah, I've had this for like a year. I never plugged it in.
Well, it was a gift. I don't know if it works.
Mm-hmm.
Right now it's Schrodinger's cat. Right now I could watch it if I wanted to. If I plug it in and the Laserdisc player doesn't work, then I'm screwed. And then I'm going to end up buying a Laserdisc player off eBay that probably also won't work.
I have to do this because you did it conversationally. Yeah, I know what Schrodinger's cat is. I know what it is.
All right, future movies. We have a confirmed movie for Mandalorian and Grogu, supposedly coming out in May of 26. And we'll talk about TV later, but what do we think about that? We like that as a way to end that sort of
Do you have a
storyline.
synopsis? Do you know anything about what's going to be in the movie?
There is no details, just that it's Mandalorian and Grogu.
I was going to say probably Mandalorian and Grogu would be a good guess.
Oh, thanks, Brian.
Oh,
And they'll
He's a
probably be in
wizard.
every scene, just like Solo was.
Yeah, I like the idea. I, as a lot of Star Wars fans, you get nervous, right? Like, hey, don't do something stupid with a great couple of characters. But I love the idea, and I'll watch it.
Well, it's John Favreau
Favreau.
is doing it. So, okay.
I
John
know.
Oh, is he
Favreau's
directing
doing
it?
Yeah, I don't know if he's directing it, but yeah, directed by, and then him and Filoni are writing it. So
It'll be good then.
yep,
Favreau's.
there's
probably going to be good.
That guy doesn't do a lot of missteps.
the man jumped the Star Wars universe up again and created Marvel. So
Yeah, yeah, he's got a pretty good resume these days.
Yeah, he did all right. He's
Yeah.
all right. And he did the holiday. So there's that.
Okay, so I'm keeping that in. That's staying in.
Stand by
I
it.
get what you guys are saying. One thing, so the Mandalorian miniseries, one gave Luke his, not just desserts. That's like when something bad happens. Gave him his proper whatever. Gave him his Darth Vader Rogue
A
One.
nod. A good nod. Yeah.
Yep.
And I'm excited to see what's going to happen. I'm going to throw it out there. Probably 90% chance I'm going to like it no matter what he does.
Yeah. Same.
But Grogu's staying with I know he's the Mandalorian, but what does he go by? What's his name?
Manny? Mando?
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 No. Anyway,
Pedro Pascal.
yeah, I'll circle back to it.
Okay.
Just the fact that Grogu didn't go, he chose to not be that's like what?
Mhm.
And unless they make a little helmet with the ears and everything,
Din Djarin, is that what you're trying to think?
yeah, Din Djarin.
Ah.
Yeah. So I like that I get that he stayed with him because that's how the story goes on, but it's like you just saw what Luke did. We all saw it. You go with him.
Yeah.
That's the guy. That's the guy.
So that's the only confirmed movie. We have a somewhat seems legit trilogy. Simon Kinberg is supposed to be heading it up. So for the listener, Simon Kinberg, he did X-Men: The Last Stand, Days of Future Past, Apocalypse, and Dark Phoenix. So 1 for 4 ain't bad. He also did
One, that's horrible. And I would say it was 3 for 4.
Oh,
Wow. Okay.
okay. All right.
We can we can circle back to that some other time. He also did Jumper, Sherlock Holmes, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. He produced Logan. He helped with Star Wars Rebels and Deadpool. So he's got a pretty decent background
Yeah,
in.
we're like 9 for 10 now. He's 90%.
So supposedly he is going to be doing a trilogy that is considered episodes 10 through 12. What do we think about that? Do we think that's a good idea? Is that a bad idea after what happened with the sequel trilogy?
So 10 through 12 suggests connected with Ray. Are we
That's
talking about Ray?
It doesn't. There's no confirmation of that, but there's got to be something, right? Because why would you make it the same saga?
Similar reservation. I love the idea of having a new trilogy come out and being able to go see movies that are connected and starting a Star Wars universe. But attaching it to the other ones makes me a little bit nervous that once again you put yourself in a box. There's plenty of worlds and opportunities with the Force and good guys and bad guys. You could make an entire trilogy. It has nothing to do with anything else. I'm gonna watch it either way.
Yeah,
I said that earlier. I'm gonna watch it either way, but makes me a little nervous that we might be forcing it a bit.
Ha, nice.
See what you did there.
I mean, if you call it, the 10, 11, 12, it has to be the same story. If you want to call it a Star Wars story, trilogy, or whatever Star Wars universe story, that's fine. But I mean, if you're going 10, 11, 12, it has to be the Skywalker slash
Yep.
now Palpatine slash back to Skywalker
Yep.
story.
A Sith Lord rises out of the ashes. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. It locks you in, and we know where it's got to go. It's got to be the finish of the Skywalker Palpatine issue.
Yep. So there's a rumored movie. So the one of the directors, Miss Marvel, the TV show. I don't know if anybody watched that. Pretty good actually. But one of the directors in that show is supposedly on to do a new Rey only movie, single movie, just about Rey. That's a rumor. It's not confirmed. Maybe a connection movie, maybe getting us to a new trilogy, or
Right. So that'd be weird if the
Right.
10, 11, 12 are a continuation of the story, but you need the standalone Ray movie, which would almost be like your Rogue One movie.
right.
What I'm sure Disney's going to wring this towel and get every
Oh, sure.
drip
Sure.
out of it. So
Yeah.
if
So the
they
Ray
think they
movie
can
is
make it work,
the Ray movie is prequel-ish, is what we're saying.
Yeah. I mean, obviously we don't know. It could
prequel to a sequel that hasn't been released yet.
Right.
Yeah.
A pre-prequel.
Yeah.
There James Mangold has been attached to a Star Wars movie. So James Mangold just did Indiana Jones 5. I have not seen it, but I've heard good things. He also did Logan. He did the Wolverine, which was a sort of a prequel origin story one, I believe. He did the most recent Bob Dylan movie that Brian loves, A Complete Unknown. He also did Walk the Line, which is actually a pretty decent movie, if you ask me. So, but this film's set to supposed to be set thousands of years in the past. So like a High Republic maybe type
Yep.
thing, if you guys know that term.
All for that.
So that might be interesting. So I think with a movie like that, there'd be no box, right? You can do
Right.
basically whatever you want. Um, the Acolyte notwithstanding.
Right.
Unless there's a couple of trilogies people want to make about back there, and it's an introduction to that, which I'm also okay with.
Sure.
Like, it's not just a standalone movie. A whole bunch of people have ideas, and they're like, "This is the setup."
Right.
Much
Yeah.
like how Iron Man kicked off that whole Marvel thing.
Yep.
And I'd love that.
The two that, if they're true, I would be most excited about a Dave Filoni movie involving Ahsoka.
Mhm.
I'd watch that.
Definitely.
We'll talk about TV at another point, but Ahsoka. And then okay, we mess this up every time we say it, so I apologize in advance. Taika Waititi, is that right?
I think that's pretty close.
Uh,
Taika
he
Waititi.
he has been attached to a Star Wars movie, except he said he wants to do something new with new characters.
Okay.
I would watch that one too.
Yeah, absolutely.
No doubt about that.
And that could mean anything. That could mean a past. The past is, Matt, comic books and books have fleshed out, and not all of it's canon, due to Disney's picking and choosing. Video games even. There is a lot of loved High Republic, stuff that people would like to see made and not really messed with. Give us new characters, or tweak it, but don't change it, because there's people who love, and my boys are both, two of them, that love the High Republic stuff, and the 100 or 1,000 years before Luke Skywalker. But as Tim brought up earlier, there's enough of a universe that it could be during this thing that's going on Alderaan, this other thing was happening, and Taika Waititi handles that, or
Close.
so there's room to breathe if they give it to him.
Yeah, I mean that was my thought. Like, not everything, I get it, you have to have direction, but not everything has to be centered on the Skywalker saga. if you're saying there's this big wide galaxy of anything happening, I mean that's where, and again we'll talk about TV later, but like some of these TV shows, like you could literally do anything you wanted on any planet you wanted, and it would be fine as long as you don't run into all the main characters for some reason. Like you can do whatever you want, right?
Right.
There's nothing wrong with not having Darth Vader in a movie, but dropping the name. If
Sure.
you're doing something in another part of the galaxy, and they're like, I think Darth Vader's coming here. We better clean this shit up. I think that's cool.
So how would you be with similarly if we're in a Taika Waititi movie somewhere parallel, adjacent to what's going on, and obviously there's going to be a good guy and a bad guy, and probably somebody with money and somebody without money, and like either one of them is worked with or been ripped off by Han Solo, and that's all that's ever meant.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because some people would be like, "Why do they even have to bring it up?" And other people would watch the movie and it's like, "Oh, I didn't even know this was a Star Wars movie."
Yeah,
Because
right.
they didn't say anybody's name that I recognized.
But I
You
mean
know?
that's the same, that's Brian's term, right?
Yeah,
There's
that's
your
the
fickle
fickle fandom.
fandom. Like you're not gonna please everybody. Somebody's gonna be butthurt about something,
Right.
which is sad, but it's just the way it is.
Well, and it makes content.
Right.
And I think not a lot, but there's a portion of it that is that I'm going to say
Sure.
this thing just to get people to hate my video, because a
Yep.
thumbs up or a thumbs down registers the same
Yeah.
as interaction.
That happens a lot in like gaming, like card games and like I don't know if any Magic the Gathering, that's still around by the way, if you guys didn't know. And that's a big thing in that community, is just to say the most ridiculous things just to get content and get clicks. And I'm sure Star Wars is the same way,
Yeah.
and anything else that has a huge fandom like that. The only other movie rumor that I saw is Sean Levy. He did Deadpool and Wolverine. He's been connected with a Star Wars movie, possibly getting a Star Wars movie. So I thought that might be interesting. Are we getting an R-rated Star Wars movie? You can't,
I hope
right?
so.
Why not?
Can you make an R? I don't know. I'm throwing it out there. To me, in my mind, it kind of doesn't compute because of just your target audience is generally that either child or someone who was a child who liked it when they were a child and now are older, obviously. But can you make
Here's
an
the
R
over
Star
the
Wars?
here's the over the shoulder Disney issue with that probably.
Sure.
But
But, but
George
they
Lucas didn't mind showing some cleavage. I mean, he didn't
fair.
mind making things look sexy, and
But
maybe that should be part of the story.
Disney
Maybe there
Plus is
should be some.
showing Deadpool Wolverine.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I mentioned this before we started recording. My Disney Plus, because Hulu's attached now. Heat came up with Al Pacino
All
and
right.
Robert. It's like I don't know how much I agree with you in terms of the Disney over the shoulder, but I wonder if that's starting to be more of like a, hey, we need to make ourselves relevant in a world where Netflix is actually being um said that they're too graphic in some of their stuff. And you know how like
yeah.
HBO has always been sort of, a lot of nudity and sex
Yeah.
and violence and whatever. Like, is Disney Plus going, hey, we got these adult subscribers. Should we try to cater to this adult group?
Well, and it always has been weird that there's um, a wide breadth for violence, and you could still say stay PG-13, and there is
Yeah.
a narrow window of sex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can cut Darth Maul in half, PG. You
Yeah.
show it R,
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
or show two people in bed under the covers, probably PG-13 or R,
Yep.
because they might be having sex. So it's just really weird how violence is accepted, but sex is not.
Really good point. Did anybody have on their bingo card?
Nope.
I didn't
I
think we were
did.
going to get to in this conversation,
Well,
but God bless us all. We got there.
it makes me think a little bit, sorry, this is a little bit of a sidetrack, but like Star Trek, because I mentioned in the previous episode, my dad is a big Trekkie, so we watched a lot of Star Trek. I still do. I enjoy it. but that's much more willing to explore some of that, Aaron.
Mhm.
Like Captain Kirk is a playa, right? Like
Yeah,
Right.
that's
Oh yeah.
it's part of his
got
that's
it down with
part
a
of his
lot of
persona,
aliens.
you know.
Yeah.
So it's just an interesting point. Like, at some point do you start, or do you try to keep it true to the original sort of vision of it's an adventure with
I like where you're going here, and I think the band should evolve. Like, we're all older. This isn't 1977 anymore. You
yeah,
know, you don't have to keep playing, you know, the music that got everybody hooked. You're allowed to, try different things. And people are going to not like you because of it, and that's
Yeah.
totally
oh,
fine. But
they already took care of that. People don't like a lot of stuff about Star
right.
Wars. So
But I mean,
Yeah.
as far as even just like maturing,
sure.
uh, with your fandom. I think that's fine.
Yeah.
I agree with that totally, and I'm still going to go with the Disney over the shoulder because if this movie's a hit, how do they get it into Disney World right next to the Millennium Falcon?
Right. Yeah.
Like they have to protect themselves because they set up this image for themselves, right?
Sure.
But
Sure.
I'm for it. Anything that they can do to expand this universe and have stories within the confines of the Force and Jedi and Sith, but
Say
outside in the outer
midichlorians. Say
rims
it.
or in the Republic, I'm all for it.
We
What'd you say, Aaron? I
we
missed it.
I said say midichlorians.
made
Say
it
it.
2 whole episodes without saying the word midichlorians. Impressive. So I
M
guess
count. M
just
count.
M count. Yeah, that's right. They retconned it to M count. So just to finish this up here, we're going a little longer, but anything you want to see from a movie? We kind of talked about it a little bit as we went. Is there anything you want to see from a movie? Any closure on Ray? Any stories that we haven't seen before? Anything from a other source that you've seen or read or played or whatever? Is there anything else you want to see?
I want to see who Yoda learned and was trained from.
All right.
Or even know what his origin planet
Yeah.
is, because that's
Yeah.
never been said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Along those lines, I would like to see um, the High Republic stuff. The origins of the Sith, because they used to be a race. I'd like to see what they do with all of that. The and I don't know where Disney falls on all of it, as far as canon. Um, how they deal with the old stuff, and I'm all for completely new to blow my mind.
Yeah.
New planets, new people, new abilities. And I think it wasn't what was the last miniseries with the stranger,
Acolyte.
Acolyte.
the acolyte. They kind of touched on a little of that there. They kind of gave you both. There was a little history, and there was like some new abilities, and even some new explanations that I had never heard of before. So, the witches, and cool. Give it to me.
Brian?
Nothing's jumping out at me that I could throw out there that we haven't already talked about, really. I like the shows that are going on. Just the idea with Mandalorian and Grogu is taking some of the shows and turning them into a movie and seeing it on the big screen. Um, so if they can come up with a good storyline, that's all I care about. Really, a good storyline and character development. They could be some new ones like Tim wants, or just doing stuff with the characters that are already there and adding some twists to it that make it enjoyable and not the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one thing. I'd like them to wrap it up in 20 years. Because if I saw the first one in a theater when I was 5, I'd like to see the last one before, well,
75.
like don't make movies after I'm alive. Like
Well, that's not
close out the
fair.
whole thing, close out the franchise in my life, in my lifetime.
Don't worry, Tim. We won't tell you.
Okay, all right, that's fair.
I
Thank you.
the only thing I'd like to see is I'd like to see them explore more of a concept of like gray Jedi. Like, in the original trilogy, we got all this no attachment, you can't love, can't
Uh-huh.
fear, you can't hate. And then I think they tried to explore it a little bit with Rey, with just sort of you can have one foot sort of in light side and dark side and still survive. And I think Obi-Wan too explored that a little bit. So I'd love to see some sort of movie about that concept where we're not good little angels, but we're not, force lightning people to death either. I think that'd be an interesting concept, something new, something they could kind of explore.
Which you could even go with Darth Tyrannus,
Dooku?
Count Dooku, left the order. Why did he leave? Left and came back, and then there's Quinlan Voss is another Jedi who left the order.
Mhm.
Is a good guy, but kind of along the lines of Ahsoka. There's other
Yeah. Oh
paths and
yeah, and
stuff.
Ahsoka, right? Ahsoka's the same thing. They could explore it with her too. She took the crystals out of her lightsaber, and her lightsabers aren't colored anymore, and stuff like that. So
Right. So the only thing that kind of going back and forth with the timeline and stuff is, and with the Acolyte, we ran into this too. But with the prequel trilogies, it's like, why is everything in the past better? You
yeah,
know, we're
right.
supposed so like with the Acolyte, it's like we got a whip lightsaber. We've
Yeah,
never, how
right.
is this better
Right.
technology supposed to be in the past?
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
but
that'd
you'll
be
run into that, and it's cool.
for sure. All right. Well, I think that about wraps it up. You guys are good. Appreciate everybody listening. Just a reminder, we are part of the SPDM Podcasting Network. You can check out our main cast, the BTB Movie Club there, along with a ton of other podcasts. Thanks for playing along. See you later.